Hello guys, just thought I'd give you a few tips really for how I go out fluorine. Fluorine is the art of using traditional pike flies on a lure fishing rod. So when I go out fluorine, especially on like canals, shallow canals especially, I will only be using the smaller flies. I don't tend to use the big flies, so you know, the typical 6, 7, 8 inch flies, all different perch patterns, like these I will be using on the canals. Sometimes though I will be using what Dave calls the full metal rackets. This one's Roberta the Roach, but it's a full metal racket. It's all like tinsel, looks like metal basically, and it gives off a good shine, and the fish go crazy for it. And there's certain days that I use those over the others. When it's slightly opaque, I like to use the perch pattern with the dark top, and that's because it stands out a mile in the water and creates a nice silhouette above the fish, and they see it from quite a distance even in the murkier waters. As the water's clearing up and the sun starts to set, I start going with a bit more of a washed out colour, and this is where these fluoro flies come in. They are fluorescent to an extent, and they do quite well in the evenings. This perch pattern, one of my favourite, kills it in all conditions really, muddy or clear, doesn't really matter. But again, I'm using all these weightless most of the time anyway, and just like the full metal rackets, I prefer them all weightless. I can't stress this enough. But when I do want to use a weight on these smaller flies, I start at 5 grams and the maximum I use is 7 grams. And there's a reason that I won't go any lower than 5, and that's just because on the weights themselves that I'm using, they're called cheb weights or chebarashka. They look like this, and so this is a bad example of a weight. And the reason why it's a bad example is the wire in the middle goes through the centre of the weight. So when you're using a pattern fly that has to be worked the correct way up, or is best worked the correct way up, one of these can confuse the fly and cause it to sort of drift on its side and do all sorts of silly things in the water, and you still will get a hit, but you won't get as many when it's like that. So what I recommend is, rather than using these lead ones, if you switch over to tungsten, they're a bit more pricier, but as you can see, the clip is through the top half of the weight. That heavy offset weight at the bottom helps to right the fish up the correct way. And you'll, on the weights, I'll show you a bigger one so you can see on the camera. On the weights itself, there's two sides. One side's kicked up and one side's straight. On the kicked up side, that's where you want your hook, and just like on your fly, so if you're fishing bottom hook pattern like this, you're going to want to put on your clip like this, with the kick up bit there to keep the top that kick up is facing the top half of your fly. Do not let them hit the bottom when you're fishing bottom hooked baits. If you're fishing a single colour fly like this black one, you can have the hook up or down. I prefer them up if I'm using chebs. Stops me anchoring on the bottom and snagging up. So the reason why I say 5 grams is, if you go to 3 grams, quite often this wire clip is far too fine and can bend out of the cheb, resulting in a lost fish with a hook in its mouth. So don't do that. Use the tungsten, 5 gram, 7 gram. You can get them in 6 as well, but the lower the gram, the better. So we'll move on to what I do on the rivers now. So the rivers, or the deep canal, especially the one where I live, is a different game really. The fish are everywhere sometimes, you just can't tell where they are on the day. It's just trying to locate the fish and trying to get a hook up. So I always start off weightless, and typically if I go on the big canal or on the rivers, then I will be using the bigger flies. And to give you a size comparison, there's the little one, there's the big one. There's a bit of a difference there. And so I tend to get a lot of the bigger fish. What you'll find is prefer to take the big flies. They just want to eat once. They don't want to be chasing around small stuff all day long. They want to eat once and be full, so that's where the big flies come in. And they do cast better, they're heavier, and I can pretty much clear the canal with a weightless fly, which is probably 15 metres, 20 metres with the wind on my back. Use the wind to your advantage all the time. That's another top tip. So, same rules apply with the cheb weights, with the clip and the way it's facing up to keep the right side of the fly up always helps. And on these big flies I'll be using the 14 grams on the rivers and canals, and on the slightly windier days or when the water's rushing through on the rivers where we've had rainfall, I will switch up to 16 grams. It makes a little bit of difference and helps you control the fly a little bit better in the water. So when you cast out with the flies, cast to a spot. It's ideal really first if you use a jig head and just work out how deep it is, because it's going to take, with 14 gram, holding the line tight, they drop about a metre every 2 seconds. That's what I've worked out anyway, and that way I can avoid a lot of the snags by keeping it off the bottom. Most of the pike are middle of the water anyway, and most of the takes are at your feet. So going on with the big flies, I've got a couple here which are firm favourites. I'll just show you them now. So quite often we get some rain in England, as you know, like today, and the rivers get murky, the canals get murky, or boat traffic might make it murky. If you're fishing for the bigger fish, bigger flies are the answer. That's been in my experience. Prove me wrong if you can, but that's my experience. Black fly, dirty water, works a treat, a bit like black lures work in dirty water. A lot of people think it's odd, but no, black lures. Fishing night time, UV reactive flies going to work a treat, especially on those urban environments where there might be some street lighting nearby, giving you off a little bit light in the water. That'll make this fly pop in the water to the fish anyway. They see differently to us. I've got this big perch pattern, which is the bigger version of this one. As you can see, it's a lot bigger. And again, it's those dark backs with the light bellies seems to work the magic. This one is a firm favourite of mine because it just works in a lot of conditions. It's one of those flies where you can take it everywhere and it's pretty much going to work, but not as much as the next one, if I'm going to be honest with you. This is the original, so it might be looking a little bit battered. Can't see it so much on camera, but it's absolutely full of flash. And this is the original Mike Smaller. This is the number 1. And this one gets absolutely hammered. It's unreal how many fish I've caught on this now. I think the first day I caught 8 fish on it. It was crazy. They was queuing at my feet for this fish. And I like to use this one in clear waters or slightly opaque. But it's really is a full metal racket with the amount of flash that's going through it, and it's going to catch you a lot of fish. So I'll pretty much be confident with this in the dirtier waters too, because it's white and it's going to glow sort of in the water. But again, with these cheb weights, the good thing about these single colour flies is you can fish it with the hook up, avoiding those snags, avoiding those fallen trees that are in the river. So here comes my few top tips really for fishing on the rivers for the pike. Use the flow to your advantage. Use the wind and the flow to your advantage. Cast downriver and downwind if you can. So the reason I say downriver is so when you cast downriver, you're casting down, your fly goes in the water, and you can hold your line and keep that fly fairly buoyant, or a bit more buoyant than you would if you was casting across the river or upriver. Upriver, it comes towards you, your line goes slack, and you can miss fish. It's happened to me, and it's super annoying, especially when you see the big flash of a fat belly swimming off into the distance. But yeah, downriver, and you can keep it twitching, especially along the margins. You can pull a lot of fish out. If you want the bigger fish, you tend to have to go a little bit deeper in the middle, but you can still hit across at sort of a 45-degree angle and hit fish out without an issue. Look for those calm spots on the river too. So you see a slack, there might be an island, for example. Behind an island, there's always a slack. Hit those around those slacks, and you're going to find it. Those little cut-ins on the edges, you see. Hit all those up. You know, don't think just one cast is going to work. Stand there 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes. Just work that slack. There will be a fish sat down in there. Quite often I'll fish a slack for 5 minutes, go away, fish another one, then come back again and chuck a different fly in just to see what I can pull out. And quite often or not, on my return, I pull a fish out. Reed beds are important. Fish like this that sit in the reed beds. I was recently fishing on the river, and what I didn't notice was right in front of me, tucked in with all the camo on its back, was a pike. It was, as soon as I noticed it, it was obvious as hell that it was sat there. But yeah, at first I didn't notice it, and I think that if I was casting over towards it, I think I could have enticed it out for a bite. So when you see on the river as well, there's like reed beds and gaps. Hit those gaps. I've had a few funny moments where I've hooked into two fish, one after the other, from the same gap. That sort of happens on the downside of the rivers as well. As the river goes down. You'll find there's odd trees and things like that. Behind the trees, finding where the weed beds are. That's a good one, and just going over the top of them. Quite often the pike could be sat in there. There's some sort of grassy style weed, and the fish sort of sit in the grass, sort of tucked away, waiting to pounce on something. If you pass your fly super slow past it, just glide it over their heads, they will take it. Yeah, like I said, find those slacks, find those features, and you'll find the fish. So any further questions, just put them in the comments, and I'll reply. Thank you very much for watching. Take care, and good luck fishing.